Penn State fans, we are off and running through transfer portal season. Is this the second season, Johnny? The third season? What are we calling the April, the 2 week or 15-day April window that's now open? What transfer portal number is this?
Bob, I don't know. I've lost count. I'm just calling it the 2024 spring window
Okay,
because we
that's
had the
probably the
winter
best way to do
window.
it.
Yeah, we had the winter window that was open in January, December, January, and now it's open again for all players, undergraduates, graduates, whoever. We're recording this Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
And it opened on Tuesday, and it'll be open until April 30th for all football players to enter and find a new home if they want. I believe graduate transfers have to be in by May 1st. And also, just to clarify something just at the top, like that's just for players to enter the portal. They don't have to find a home by the 30th of April. Like this, they can drag this out as long as they want.
They just need to jump into the pool by the end of April. They might not be great swimmers. Some of them may end up drowning in the transfer portal pool. But you have to be in the portal pool by the end of April. Johnny, we'll talk. We could still circle back to some blue-white stuff, but so we have two Penn State swimmers in the pool as of this morning. I don't know. I have not checked back to your portal primer tracker to see if anyone else is now in the pool, but we have two wideouts, I believe, in the pool. We're not surprised at all by the names that are in there. We could talk about maybe some other people who might be testing the waters. See what I did there? But John,
I like it.
Oh boy,
KeAndre. I would say testing the waters, not the waters, but that's just the difference between you.
Hey, also, and I think not just you, Johnny, because I put something on Twitter for you and Joe, but everyone in the greater Philadelphia area. I think yesterday was it 60 years of Wawa came down. Was it yesterday that it's been around for 60 years? That's unbelievable. That is quite a run for Wawa. I'm still hopeful it's going to shove its way into the Harrisburg area. They keep talking about proposed sites. The number keeps jumping, but there's still no construction. I need some construction. I don't know if you have it in there, but are they ever going to break ground on any of these Wawa sites in Harrisburg?
Well, Bob, my inn just retired from Wawa, but I can tell you that they have world domination on their minds. The staying power in the Philly area, New Jersey, Delaware, Florida, it's been around for quite some time. And I'm not 60 years old, so Wawa is older than me. And I feel like Wawa is gonna be here long past when we're gone too. But no, we know it's coming to State College. There's gonna be a few locations up there for all the Penn State Philly folk to take advantage of, and I would expect it to be in Harrisburg as well, Bob. But once you see the construction is when you'll know.
I'm just trying to visualize Penn State fans after a Penn State game, whether it's a noon kick, 3:30 night game, just flocking to the Wawa, starving after tailgating all day and they're staying over for the night, or maybe they're students. Johnny, it's going to be a gold mine. It's just going to be a light. Oh my gosh, what a great location for Wawa, because there's going to be some Penn State fans ready to do some late night eating in State College.
Well, even we saw after the blue-white game, I mean, how windy it was there all day on Saturday. And after the game, in quotation marks, the scrimmage, we saw there was like a trash tornado on the field with the wind whipping up everything from the stands. And I think, in a few years or in a year, I'm not sure exactly on the timeline, you're going to see some of that trash be the soft pretzel, the little plastic.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to see a lot of those in the stands, students sneaking them in or doing whatever they need to do.
Dare I say, can we hope maybe that they come up with a plan for a Wawa concession stand inside Beaver Stadium?
We can dream.
First of all, I don't even think you're going to spend any time in the press box,
No.
Johnny. If there's a Wawa at the Beaver Stadium concessions, you're just going to you're going to post up there. It's going to be like me and Pickle at like a beer line. We're just not going to leave. You're going to be the same way with Wawa. And I know a lot of people think that way. I know we're spending a lot of time on Wawa. I'm just kind of miffed because my sub experience is pretty much limited to sheets, and that's okay. But I'm getting a little tired of it.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Look, I lived in Pittsburgh for 4 years. I know Sheets like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
Good establishment. Sheets is a good guy, but he's not Wawa. He's just not Wawa.
John,
I know people will disagree with me. That's okay.
I know. Especially people in the Altoona area. Yeah. Johnny, let's get it back on the rails. The portal, KeAndre Lambert-Smith, 4 years at Penn State, kind of disappeared from Penn State spring practices down the stretch. James was asked about him, I think by Mark Brennan right after the game, and God bless James. He's always got a creative way for handling questions he maybe does not want to answer. And he just said, hey, look, happy to talk about everyone who participated in the game, and that's as far as I'm going to go. He was not at the stadium. He was not in the game, and now he's no longer, I think, he can investigate all he wants. Sounds like he's got some nibbles in the portal, but that's going to be a wrap for KeAndre Lambert-Smith. How do you feel about it?
Not surprised, Bob. And this is something that in all of our reporting over the last week, 2 weeks, even talking on the podcast and going back to December, January when that portal was open, I'm not surprised that he is leaving Penn State. I was frankly I was a little surprised he didn't enter the portal after the 2023 season because you look at what he did and how the end of the season transpired for him. You mentioned disappeared. I mean, he really didn't make an impact down the stretch at all. Had some good moments last year, right? Like he comes in as the presumed number one wide receiver on this team. He makes a big statement in the opening game against West Virginia with that 72-yard touchdown. He has the game winner against Indiana. He has some 6-catch games in there and made some big plays for this team. But just the wild inconsistency, not only from a catching the ball standpoint with drops and route running, sometimes giving up on routes, frankly, and you can see it better than most up in the press box when you're watching the live all 22. Him frankly, giving up on some routes and then down the stretch, I think he had 2 catches in the final 4 games, 1 target in the Peach Bowl. I tried talking to him after the Peach Bowl in the open locker room when anyone who plays in the game is required to be made available. They can say no. And that's what KeAndre said to me. He's like, I'm not answering any questions. I believe the last time that we talked to him was early November. Didn't talk to him at all during the offseason when he said he was coming back. Didn't talk to him at all. They didn't make him available during spring camp. And then you have what happened last week where he's away from the team, not at the media open practice session on Tuesday. Word was that his locker was cleaned out before the blue-white game. And so was not at the blue-white game. Not a surprise to see him in the portal. And look, he was the most experienced returning Big Ten wide receiver with 38 starts. He did lead this team in receiving last year. So given the timing of it, like you're not going to get many guys, I think, in the portal in the spring that are big contributors. So that I think has been the genesis of why he is, garnering interest from programs that I was a little surprised by. I think Georgia reached out to him, but it's a loss for this team, but it's not a surprising one.
Yes, agreed on all counts. I was just thinking, I just keep going back to the offseason leading into the 2023 season and James being, I thought James was pretty emphatic that he was a number one. I mean, he would, and it was like, we know what we have in him, big year, guy that can stretch the field. We're looking for some other guys to step up. Hopefully it'll be Harrison Wallace, but we need some others. And it just came, it just kind of came crumbling down. I think the last time I remember talking to him after game was at Maryland. I know he was made available after they beat them. Didn't have much to say in that game. What I was driving at, though, is this is James's 11th year. And in my mind, when you talk about maybe a true number one receiver at Penn State, and this is in his 11th year, and there isn't one There isn't one now. So I'm counting this year. There still could be one, but right now I don't see there being a number one. It's Julian Fleming could certainly take that opportunity and run with it if he gets going early in the season, but we still don't know yet. I can only think of, 3 receivers that I would call true number ones for James Franklin at Penn State: Chris Godwin, KJ Hamler, and Jahan Dotson. I think there were a couple players that were close, and you could help me out, Johnny, too. But as far as like a clear-cut number one, the defense is like, wow, we got to really, 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 really try and take this guy out of the game or limit the damage that he could do. I know they've had some really, really talented tight ends that in a lot of ways were elite options in the passing game in Mike Gesicki and Pat Freiermuth, but it just seems to me it's been way, way too hard for Penn State to recruit, develop, and establish a number one receiver during James's time. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't think it should be that hard if you're going to recruit the way James is recruited.
No, I don't think it should be. I mean, you talk about the number of receivers that they've churned through. And as we talk about the portal, KeAndre Lambert-Smith is in, Malik Mega, who, was a special teams captain last year and, was a valuable asset on special teams with his speed, but didn't make an impact at receiver. Didn't expect him to make an impact at receiver this upcoming season. He's also gone. Would not be surprised if there are a couple more receivers that enter the portal, guys who, are younger, maybe, haven't made their impact already, haven't made their impressions felt, and feel like they can go elsewhere. So just keep an eye on receiver, because I think that position room is just going to keep churning. Maybe not necessarily talent to the NFL, but just keep churning and keep trying to find a combination and group of guys that works. But, I think a part of that is the wide receivers coach, the fact that James has had so many in his time, and you go from Josh Gaddis to you have David Corley in there, Jared Parker, now Marcus Hagans. I know I'm missing one, right? There was another wide receiver coach in there too, and Taylor Stubblefield, who some people blame him for how the wide receiver room is now and his recruiting and development, and I mean the blame can be passed around, really. So it's not a situation you want to be in, especially going into the 2024 season, and kind of a similar narrative to last year where you have all this talent. You have guys like Singleton, Katron, Abdul, 5-star quarterback, and Drew Aller. And now that class of 2022 can leave for the 2025 NFL draft. So this might be your kind of last dance with those guys before they go off to the NFL. And you want to maximize that, especially with, a 12-team playoff, Michigan not on the schedule, like some things breaking Penn State's way in 2024. But man, if you don't have any receivers to throw to and you're just really relying on the run game and Tyler Warren, you're limiting yourself. And so I do think Penn State has to be as aggressive as they can be in the portal this spring and trying to bring in a receiver or two to replace the production that they're going to lose. You don't want to lose any more guys who could make an impact for you. I mean, you mentioned Harrison Wallace. There's Amari Evans, Caden Saunders could develop into a guy. Like, you don't want any of those guys to leave either. So, this is going to be a very interesting couple of weeks for this wide receiver room as the portal continues to be a thing.
Yeah, and I think, it would surprise me, assuming they don't lose, no one else goes in the portal, and they don't lose any other wide receiver on the spring that was with the Lions through spring. Andy Kotelnicki, I mean, I don't know that we're going to see a lot of two-back from him, but you know what? We don't really know what Andy Kotelnicki has got up his sleeve. So it's either going to be if it's not going to be that, it's either going to be 2 tight end sets or it's going to be 3 wide receiver sets. And if it's 3 wide receiver sets, I think I feel pretty comfortable saying, Julian Fleming, a healthy Harrison Wallace, and Amari Evans are probably going to be the 3. I think Liam Clifford could also push maybe to be that 3rd receiver as well. And if it's 2 tight ends, I mean, I actually think they have 3 tight ends they really like right now. But with Tyler Warren, Khalil Dinkins, and Andrew Rappelier, who had a nice touchdown catch, even though he was wide open. But
Yeah.
I think he looks like a player to me. He looks like he's a big guy, frame a lot like Pat Freiermuth. I just think that's probably the skill position group you're going to be dealing with in the passing game. And I don't know, Johnny. We talked about it in the video after the Blue White game. I don't know how much better they can get. I'm sure there is room for improvement. I know there were some people hating on the Penn State passing game in the Blue White game from afar. Some quote unquote talent evaluators were, I think, a little rough on Drew, but those guys weren't at the stadium to see that wind and that chill. It was really a difficult day to complete even like the shortest of passes. That was one of the windier days I've ever been a part of at Penn State, definitely in spring. But the passing game overall, I really think Kotelnicki's going to have to be at his creative best, and he did it at Kansas, so why can't he do it at Penn State?
Yeah, Bob, you took the words out of my mouth when talking about the Twitter evaluators coming down hard on Drew and the passing offense, because like you mentioned, the wind was insane. And you might go ahead and say, well, the wind could be insane in November and October, right? But the other bit of that is that offense, what we saw looked pretty similar to what Penn State ran last year. So I think they kept it very, very vanilla.
Yeah.
No reason for James Franklin or new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki to show their hand to give Ohio State or anyone else on the schedule next year, West Virginia in the opener. No reason at all to give them tape to work off of. You know what I mean? So I think it was a very bland, vanilla offense that also, like, KeAndre Lambert-Smith was with this team throughout spring ball, and then the last week he wasn't. So you then take your returning top receiver out of the equation, and it makes running an offense on that short notice a little bit more difficult. But they weren't trying to impress you in the spring game. They were trying to go through reps and just kind of get through it unscathed, no injuries. I don't think there were any injuries in the Blue-White game, at least from what we could tell from watching the game. It's not like they had to bring the card out for anyone, which is good. The guys who were already hurt, bumps and bruises, or just wanted to be preserved, NFL draft guys, like those guys stayed off the field and were cheering from the sidelines, and it was all good. So I think overall, like, you can't take too much from the Blue-White game. You can't, like, a cut-up clip of, Drew Aller missing receivers, like in the Blue-White game when it's 40-mile-an-hour winds. When we did our video afterwards, Bob, my hat blew off.
I did.
Like,
I'm glad you found it. It was down the field, man.
It was. Yeah, no, it nestled up against like the rail behind Penn State's bench, and I'm lucky it did. Otherwise, I would have been running 100 yards, and you would have seen me gassed. I wouldn't have returned to the video. I would have just been done for the day. But yeah, look, I just don't think we should take too much from the Blue-White game, aside from like, Abdul Carter's first step is insane. I think AJ Harris, how active he was, I think is a good sign for this team. The Georgia transfer corner, who all spring people have talked about his aggressiveness and his athleticism. I do think we saw that on Saturday. I know we can get into it a little bit more, the Blue-White game, what your thoughts were, but this passing game is still a work in progress. That much is, that's clear. That is very much clear. But to just say like, oh, Drew sucks still after watching that, I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it's cheap shots from people. I don't know if this guy's ever been to. I mean, I just thought that was really, really low. I mean, it was, a scrimmage that they were not bearing their fangs, and Penn State's got some pretty well documented issues. I think at receiver they can get better, but I really thought that was pretty bad. But that guy. I think, let's put it this way: Penn State fans have a long memory, and if the offense starts to gel in the fall, he's going to hear about because those comments I thought were not only were they it was not the right time to come out with that stuff, but it was over the top, just really, really like mean spirited. I didn't really think that guy really handled himself too professionally. But hey, there's been plenty of times, Johnny, when I've been unprofessional, so maybe I really am not in a position to say too much about that. I think his name was Brad May. I think that's his name. I can't remember.
You know what? I think it might have been Brad, Travis, Carter, Braxton, May. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you want to see, his tweet,
It's plastered all over the internet.
it's like, 2 full minutes of Drew Aller, quote unquote, highlights. Warning.
Pretty rough watch. Pretty rough watch.
It's just a dude looking for clicks.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Johnny, let's though I was going to say for the next couple minutes here on the Blue White Breakdown, we're already 20 minutes in. Just some of I'm going to write about it on Saturday, but just some of the players you think, not necessarily on Saturday, but through the totality of spring, whether catching a glimpse of them in practice or just listening to their teammates or the assistant coaches or James talk about them. If we had to make a list of maybe, 8 to 10 players who you think really, young or old, kind of really had a solid spring, positioned themselves either to start or play a key role, or even if it was a January enrollee or a second-year player, played well enough to move up on the depth chart. You mentioned AJ Harris. I think he would be on just about anyone's list. He sure looks the part, and you can tell the way that Tom Allen and James talked about him that he's going to be a big piece of what they're trying to do on defense. I do think if you want to look, let's just stay on the defense, and you just want to look on the defensive line. You mentioned Abdul Carter, who he looks like he is formidable. He's bigger. I don't know what they're listing him at, but he looks like he might even be a little bit bigger in a good way than 250. But the guy I wanted to get to was Jameel Lyons. I think when you talk about first steps and get off, Penn State's had some guys the last couple of years that have been really, really good at that. And he's fitting right in, man, in his second year. I know you weren't allowed to hit the quarterback, and it wasn't really there wasn't a lot of hitting in general, but man, that first step's impressive.
It is. Yeah. Jameel Lyons is someone that, we've written about over the last few months, really, since the end of the season, even the beginning of the season. I mean, you look at his first career sack against Delaware, he dropped back into coverage and just shot out of a cannon.
That's right, yeah.
To chase down that poor quarterback. And then really from that point on, he was in the yellow category. Am I going to redshirt? Am I not? And then Chop Robinson sustains that injury at Ohio State that forces Jameel to burn his red shirt last year, the freshman out of Philly. And, he played well and showed real promise. And you talk to his teammates. I remember at the Peach Bowl talking to Curtis Jacobs and Adisa Isaac, and both of those guys thought that he's a future first rounder. Like, he's kind of sky's the limit for him. And so I think he has all the tools necessary to develop into a top defensive end at Penn State. I mean, that room is so deep because, when you were positing the question of guys who impressed during spring and who the coaches have talked about and everything, like, yeah, you go to Abdul Carter and Jameel Lyons and Denai Dennis Sutton, but one guy I feel like we haven't talked much about is Amin Vanover, who I thought played really well in 2022. Whenever he was on the field, dealt with injuries last year, so he kind of gets glossed over a bit, but had a healthy spring. We talked to him after the spring game about his role and his confidence and where he's at right now. He's in a good place. And James has mentioned him a couple times during spring.
Yeah.
And so I think it just bears reminding how much talent Deion Barnes is working with at defensive end specifically, because Abdul, Denai, Amin, Jameel, Zariah Fisher, like those guys could all, I mean, Abdul and Denai are going to start for this team most likely. I mean, those are the most likely starters at defensive end. But I think any 5 of those could go to a number of Power 5 programs and start. And I guess that's a part of it too, where, if you're James Franklin and you're Deion Barnes, you're hoping, a Zariah or an Amin, don't go elsewhere. That they decide to stay at Penn State and work in that rotation and have one of the deepest DN rooms in the country. It's going to be interesting, Bob, over the next couple of weeks with the portal, because Penn State right now, after KeAndre and Malik go in, I believe they're at 96 scholarship players. Got to be at 86, the NCAA limit. Now, there is a little bit of room to fudge those numbers a bit if you say you take a kid off scholarship and then the NIL collective comes in and says, okay, well, hey, we'll take care of your tuition, room and board, all that kind of stuff. I think you're going to see colleges across the country, bigger programs, be able to do that for a few guys, but they're still going to need to lose some numbers. And so in an ideal world, if you're James Franklin and his staff, you're going to lose the fringe players, the guys who, aren't projected to make an impact in 2024, maybe even 2025, off the roster. And there are a handful of those players at a number of different positions. But what you don't want is to lose a talented player who might not start for you next year, but will play a big role and potentially start in 2025. You hope that they don't see, a glossy, glittery opportunity elsewhere to start right away. So just something to keep an eye on as the couple weeks go on. There's a certain level of player that they would hope to see leave via the portal and not another one.
Yeah. Yeah, that the trimming of the scholarship to get under the limit, I think is something that it didn't strike me that James was too concerned about it a couple of weeks ago. He sounded a little bit more concerned. I don't think he was concerned about getting down, but I think he was more concerned about maybe losing some good players on Saturday after the game. He just wasn't sure. He's a guy that I feel like he always thinks he's got his ducks in a row. So I don't know if there'll be any big surprises, but I do think he is more than a little bit nervous, and he probably should be, because that's a pretty deep roster he's got, and you just can't account. You can't account for everyone. Johnny, I wanted a couple more players to get to on offense too, but
yeah,
this one is not like a big surprise. But they made Tony Rojas available after the blue-white game, and he clearly is a guy that, look, if Penn State's defense is going to be nasty in 2024, and it should be, he's going to have a major role. I mean, they're going to play more nickel, I think, than they ever did under Manny Diaz. That's a Tom Allen staple, and he's going to be one of the two. But two things about him. He's almost 240 pounds now. They're listing him at 225 on the roster. He said he was 238. He was pretty confident he could play at 240. He's definitely bigger. He's a special player if he stays healthy. But when I was asking him about the 2023 defense and this year's defense, going from Manny Diaz to Tom Allen, this is a second-year player. This isn't even a veteran. He went out of his way to laud Zakee Wheatley as a key player on this defense this year in Penn State's three safety look. And their version of the nickel, where they have three safeties, Kevin Winston, Jalen Reed, the returning starters from last year. Wheatley would be the third safety. And I have to say, Tony pretty much said, he was surprised Zakee was not on the field a lot more last year with Manny Diaz. He's that good. He can do so many things in the pass game as far as covering the pass. But Zakee Wheatley, to me, and James had talked about him a couple times early in spring, is a guy that if you're looking at guys coming out of spring who have made big moves, he's at the very top of the list. I think he is.
Yeah, definitely. And Zakee is one who, in 2022, the offseason leading into that season, he was the takeaway king. And there was a lot of buzz around him coming out of camp of how many takeaways and turnovers that he forced in practice. And we saw that translate to the field. He made a big play at Purdue, at Auburn. I mean, he had his hand in, I think, 3 or 4 takeaways in 2022. Last year, he didn't have a hand in any, and it, he kind of took a back seat as KJ Winston and as Jalen Reed established themselves as Penn State's top options at safety. And really, the low light for Zakee's season was the Indiana game. He had 1 snap, and it was when it was kind of he comes up in coverage, gets burnt behind in for the early touchdown. But to see him rebound the way he's rebounded this spring camp, I think is really encouraging, is really impressive.
Yes.
For Zakee to do that and put the work in. And we talked to him in the spring. And like you mentioned, James Franklin and the staff have been really high on him. The players have been high on him. And in this 3 safety look, they're going to need him. We saw Jalen Reed occupy that lion position, close to the line of scrimmage. I wouldn't be surprised if any of them could occupy that spot, really kind of confuse an offense and mess with an offensive coordinator's head a little bit. But Zakee is going to have a big role in this team this upcoming season. And I think it's really encouraging to see what we saw from him this spring. One other name for you I got, Bob, is Cooper Cousins. The true freshman offensive lineman who comes in from Erie McDowell. He was the first member of the 2024 recruiting class. And so he was a leader in that class. And that's kind of what he got classified as or labeled. But he's a damn good player. And he's proved that so far, winter workouts, spring ball. We talked about how, I think we talked last week, maybe a little, the Connor McGovern but how rare it is for freshmen to come in and make an impact as an offensive lineman. And I think Cooper Cousins is one that definitely could. When you look at his build, you look at his profile and what he's done so far in spring camp and the good things we've been hearing from the staff and the players.
Yeah, he was on my list of the offensive guys I was going to get to if you didn't bring him up. We're running a little bit. We're at the 30-minute mark here on Transfer Portal podcast here on the Blue White Breakdown. But two more players on offense, I think that not positive, but just looking at them, watching them a little bit this spring and in the Blue White game, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking a lot about both of them, after a couple of games. One's Javen Williams. I just think the talent is there. You can see it. He looks phenomenal. I think he could almost play just about any position on that offensive line. I don't know if coming out of spring, he is viewed as a starting player. It's easy to forget that Drew Shelton is on the mend and is going to be, one of those five. Anthony Donko did not play in the spring game. I still think there's some wiggle room there at right tackle. Javen Williams is a guy for me that I think they really like. The other guy I wanted to get your thoughts on is just at tight end. I know Khalil Dinkins is a guy that can really help the team. I think that was a pretty clever screen pass, or like it was a slip screen he ran that I thought was really well set up. But Andrew Rappelier, to me, he caught the touchdown pass late in the game. He looks like one of those guys that can be, much like Tyler Warren made himself into, a guy that can impact the game as a blocker and as a receiver. So for me, Johnny, just your thoughts on Rappelier and Javen Williams.
Yeah, Javen's an interesting one because, like you mentioned, Drew Shelton on the shelf for spring ball with an injury. And I think he has enough experience where you kind of pencil him in as the starting left tackle for this team when they take the field against West Virginia. So then you're looking at right tackle. And Javen, you mentioned Anthony Donko, and Nolan Rucci as well, the Wisconsin transfer. And, Rucci was the backup left tackle at Wisconsin, I believe, for the past couple years. But to have him at right tackle really all spring, I think indicates where they view him and kind of where they view like Shelton being the left tackle. It's like, okay, just get reps at right because you could be starting for us there. So that's gonna be a very interesting competition as we view it in training camp, where position battles are won, Bob. So you talk about him and then you talk about Rappelier. And I love his frame. I love his build. He's a great route runner. I think from a blocking standpoint, from a physical standpoint, he grew in that area last year while redshirting. Really didn't see the field all that much, but didn't need to when you have Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren and Khalil Dinkins growing into that number 3 role. Now it's like, okay, it's a Tyler Warren show. Plus Khalil as an older guy who's been waiting for, biding his time and waiting for his moment to be that number 2. But boy, he's going to be pushed by Rappelier, and because I think he just has some natural ability that some you can't teach and some that you teach and really develop. And he was wide open for the touchdown in the Blue White game, so it's not like he went up and mossed 2 guys or something, but he can do it. He can do that kind of thing. And so I really think that they have a lot of good talent at tight end between those 3 that we mentioned, and then even Luke Reynolds, early enrollee 5-star. So Ty Howell's room is in a really good place right now.
All right, Johnny, we managed to make it through an edition of the Blue White Breakdown here on Wednesday morning. Just a reminder to check back on PennLive, whatever you can daily. The transfer portal is open through the remainder of the month. It's up to Penn State players to jump in it. If they want to think about leaving, they have to be in it, though, by the end of the month. Johnny, you have a portal tracker up on PennLive, a great place to check back for information. I know Penn State fans probably don't want to lose too many more players, but they do need to trim a little fat as far as getting down to 85 or 86 players. If not now, then very soon. So, Johnny, Always good chatting with you. And you know what, Penn State fans, just so you know, it's Wednesday. Johnny and I are have a little retirement party to get to on Thursday afternoon in the Harrisburg area. We won't divulge the name of it, or else there'll be a stampede to get there. David Jones is
or pitchforks.
Or pitchforks. There's some torches and pitchforks, or they'll be lining up to ask him questions. But
yes.
Yeah, we're gonna get to David Jones's retirement party on Thursday. Looking forward to it. Johnny, they have a golf course at this place. I know you're looking forward to playing it, but we might even have a recap of it next week. Next week on the Blue White Breakdown. It's also going to be NFL draft priority next week for the Blue White Breakdown, and there'll be some portal news. But Johnny, we got a party to get to in a little more than 24 hours. I'm looking forward to it. You're looking forward to it. I'll see you there, Johnny.
I can't wait. And Bob, there may or may not be a podcast being recorded.
Oh, that's right.
At Dave Jones' retirement party. May or may not be.
That's right. I forgot about that. I think I might have buried the lead like I normally do. But yes, the tentative plan is to attempt. He is distracted when it's not. They're not throwing a party in his honor. Can you imagine trying to calm him down enough to do a podcast during his retirement party? It's going to be, Johnny. We are going to have our hands full.
Is someone bringing Malort? Because I feel like that's going to be needed for a Penn State beat gathering. Someone needs to ship in some Malort. If not some light beer beverages, Bob. Very much looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, Johnny, be careful what you wish for with that Malort stuff, because it sneaks up on you real quick. It doesn't even sneak up on you. It hits you right in the back of the head.
It smacks you in the face. Yeah. I learned that at the Northwestern trip last year.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll talk to you next week. Actually, we might talk tomorrow about Dave's retirement party. We'll talk to you soon.